Dinner was simmering on the stove, but my mind was miles away, lost in a fog of disbelief. That's when it hit me, the truth about Jessica. It was a revelation that cracked my world wide open, changing everything I thought I knew. I'm Michael, and for years, Chicago had been my concrete playground. From the outside, my life probably looked like a postcard. Solid job, devoted wife, a family built brick by brick over 15 years. But life has a way of dealing knockout punches when you least expect them. That evening, as the Chicago skyline began to glow with the setting sun, I found myself marooned in our kitchen, staring into a mug of coffee long since turned cold. Streetlights flickered to life outside, but inside, my world felt like it was plunging into darkness. Jessica and I, we'd been drifting like two ships passing in the night. She was coming home later. Our once sacred date nights had become ghosts of the past, and our conversations barely scraped the surface. The distance wasn't just about miles or minutes. It was a chasm deep and silent, yet screaming to be acknowledged. I'm not one for confrontation, never been the type to demand answers. I buried myself in work, hoping things would magically mend themselves. But tonight, as Jessica walked in, barely a nod in my direction before heading straight for the bedroom, something inside me just snapped. I placed my mug down. The ceramic clinking against the countertop, a sound that echoed the heavy feeling in my chest. "Jessica," I called out, my voice steady but with an edge I couldn't quite mask. She stopped, but didn't turn immediately. When she finally faced me, there was no surprise in her eyes, just a blankness, like she'd been rehearsing this scene in her head for days. "What is it?" she asked, her tone flat, almost bored. I took a breath, trying to anchor myself to the floor. "I know," I said, the words hanging in the air, thick and heavy. "I know you've been seeing someone else." Silence descended, a suffocating blanket. Jessica didn't react immediately. No denial, no shock, just a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt. Annoyance, I couldn't decipher it. She exhaled softly, like she was already exhausted by a conversation that hadn't even begun. "Michael," she sighed, shaking her head. "Not this again." My jaw tightened, frustration rising like bile. "Don't do that," I said, my voice low but firm. "Don't act like I'm making this up." She crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "You know how demanding my job is. Late meetings, last-minute projects. I can't always be home when you want me to be." I nodded, my fingers gripping the edge of the table. "Right. Business trips, late meetings," I let out a humorless chuckle. "You think I'm an idiot, Jessica." Her lips parted like she was about to retort, but no words came. "I don't just suspect it," I continued, my voice unwavering despite the storm raging inside. "I know." Jessica stared at me, something shifting in her gaze. The moment stretched, filled with an unspoken understanding. We both knew she had nothing left to say that would change the truth, and then instead of anger, instead of outrage, she did something that shattered the last sliver of hope I was clinging to. She shrugged, a small, almost indifferent gesture, like she'd been caught in a minor traffic jam, not a betrayal that ripped through 15 years of marriage. My stomach twisted. "That's it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "That's all you have to say?" Jessica sighed again, rubbing her temples. "What do you want me to say?" "Michael." Her voice was calm, almost too calm, that I'm sorry, that it was a mistake, that I didn't mean to hurt you. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Something I muttered, anything. For the first time that night, real emotion flashed across her face. Not guilt, not regret, but frustration. "Michael, I have needs," she said, her voice sharper now. "Needs. You haven't been able to meet for a long time." It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me, so what? I asked, my voice quieter now. "You just decided to go find someone else to do it for you." Her expression softened, almost like she felt bad for me. "Almost. I didn't plan for this to happen," she admitted. "But we haven't been the same in years." The words cut deeper than I thought possible. I'd spent so much time ignoring the growing void between us, convincing myself that love could bridge any gap. But Jessica had already made her choice. And suddenly I realized, so had I. A thick silence settled. Stretching the moment unbearably, I searched her face for something. Remorse, hesitation, anything that would make this easier, less brutal, but all I found was resignation. She wasn't going to fight for this, for us. I let out a slow breath, steadying the rage threatening to erupt. "So that's your excuse?" I asked, my voice quiet but sharp, that I wasn't enough. Jessica shifted her weight, arms still crossed, but she didn't look away. "It's not that simple," she said. "We haven't been happy for a long time, Michael. I don't know how to fix that." I scoffed, right? "So instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix it, you just found someone else." She flinched slightly, the first real crack in her composure, but she still didn't deny it. I ran a hand through my hair, laughing bitterly. Damn, Jessica, you could have just told me you wanted out instead of making a fool out of me. Her jaw tightened. It wasn't about hurting you. I slammed my fist on the table, making her jump. Well, congratulations, I snapped, because that's exactly what you did. She stared at me, eyes wide like she was seeing me for the first time. I was faithful to you for 15 years. I continued, my voice raw. 15 years, Jessica. I never once thought about looking for something better when things got hard. I took a step closer, watching her swallow nervously. But you... The second thing stopped being exciting. You ran straight into someone else's arms. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. Don't. I warned, don't try to explain it away. Don't give me some half-assed excuse about how you didn't mean to hurt me, because you did. Jessica's lip trembled, but I didn't care. You say you have needs. I continued, my voice lower now. Did you ever stop to think that maybe I did too? She didn't answer. I stepped back, exhaling sharply. You know what? I don't even want to hear it. Jessica blinked, confused. What do you mean? I turned away, shaking my head. I mean, I'm done, Jessica. Her breath hitched Michael. Wait. I met her gaze, my chest tightening at the fear I saw there for the first time since this whole nightmare started. She looked afraid, not of me, but of what I was about to say. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't be in a marriage where I'm the only one who cares. Jessica's face crumpled. Please, she whispered, don't do this. I let out a hollow chuckle. Funny. That's exactly what I used to tell myself. Every time I felt you slipping away, I didn't wait for her response. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there stunned as I made my way to the bedroom. My hands were shaking, my breath uneven, but my mind was clear for the first time in months, maybe years. Jessica had made her choice. Now I was making mine. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started throwing clothes inside. I wasn't thinking about where I'd go or what I'd do next. I just knew I couldn't stay. Behind me, I heard footsteps, then her voice small and unsure. Michael, what are you doing? I didn't stop packing, leaving. She inhaled sharply. You don't have to do this. We can talk about it. I zipped up the bag and turned to face her. Talk about what, Jessica? I asked, my voice flat, about how you lied to me, about how you've been sneaking around behind my back. She flinched. I never wanted to hurt you. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, well, you did. I slung the bag over my shoulder, and now I'm done being the guy who just sits here and takes it. Her eyes filled with tears. Please, Michael, don't go like this. I studied her for a long moment. The woman standing in front of me, the one now crying, begging me to stay, wasn't the same woman I had married, and maybe I wasn't the same man she had married either. But the difference between us, I never stopped fighting for us. She did. I don't have another choice, Jessica, I said, my voice steady. You already made yours? I walked past her, heading for the front door. I could hear her footsteps following, her breath hitching with every shaky inhale. Michael, she pleaded, we can fix this. I turned the doorknob, paused, then looked back at her one last time. No, we can't. And with that, I walked out. The cold Chicago night air hit me as I stepped outside, but it wasn't nearly as chilling as the realization that my marriage was truly over. I stood there for a moment, duffel bag in hand, staring at the city streets that had once felt so familiar, so full of life. Now they felt empty. I had nowhere to go, no plan, just the certainty that I couldn't stay. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't even have to check to know it was Jessica, probably texting, maybe calling. I ignored it. Instead, I just started walking. With every step, the weight in my chest grew heavier. 15 years of my life gone just like that. It didn't matter that I had suspected it for months. It didn't matter that I had seen the signs. Knowing the truth didn't make it hurt any less. Eventually, I stopped at a hotel a few blocks away. The receptionist barely glanced at me as I handed over my card, and within minutes, I was standing in a small, unfamiliar room staring at the unmade bed. It felt surreal, like I had just stepped into someone else's life. I sat on the edge of the bed, elbows resting on my knees, hands running over my face. My phone buzzed again. This time I pulled it out and checked the screen. Jessica, 5 missed calls, 2 messages. I hesitated, then opened the text. Jessica, Michael. Please, let's talk. Jessica, Michael, I don't want to lose you. A hollow laugh escaped me. She didn't want to lose me. She had lost me the second she chose someone else. I locked the phone and tossed it onto the nightstand. I didn't have the energy to deal with her anymore. Not tonight. Instead, I lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling, exhaustion pulling at me. The emotions, the anger, the betrayal. It was all too much. Maybe tomorrow I'd figure out my next step. But for now, I just let the weight of everything crash over me, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself break. I woke to the dim glow of the hotel room, the city humming softly outside. For a moment, I forgot where I was, the unfamiliar ceiling, the stiff sheets, the empty space beside me. It all came crashing back within seconds. I sat up, rubbing my face. My phone was still on the nightstand untouched since last night. I grabbed it, half expecting more messages from Jessica. 6 missed calls, 4 new messages. I sighed, unlocking the screen. Jessica, Michael, I know you're mad. Please, just talk to me. Jessica, Michael, can we meet just once? Jessica, Michael, I messed up, but I need to see you. Jessica, Michael, I'll wait for you at the cafe on Oak Street. Please, Michael. I stared at the last message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. She had said everything I needed to hear last night, whether she realized it or not. But another part, the one that had spent 15 years loving her, wasn't ready to let go so easily. Maybe I needed to see her one last time, not to reconcile, not to give her another chance, but to close the door completely. I took a shower, threw on the same clothes from the night before, and left the hotel without thinking too much about it. The cafe was a small place, one we used to visit often, when things were good between us. I spotted her immediately sitting by the window, fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. When she saw me, her face lit up, hopeful, desperate. I didn't smile back. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. You wanted to talk. So talk. She exhaled shakily, setting her cup down. Michael, I don't know where to start. Try the truth, I said. She winced, but nodded. I was selfish. I was careless. I let myself believe that what I did wasn't hurting you because I didn't want to face what we had become. I clenched my jaw, and what exactly had we become, Jessica? Her eyes shimmered, and for the first time I saw genuine pain there. Distant, she admitted, disconnected, like we were just coexisting instead of being a real couple. I scoffed. So your solution was to find someone else. Tears welled in her eyes. No, I never planned for it to happen. It started as just attention, I guess. Someone making me feel wanted again. She wiped at her cheek. But I swear, Michael, I never stopped loving you. I shook my head. You don't cheat on someone you love. She reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled away. I don't know what I expect you to say, she whispered. But I needed you to hear me, to know that I regret everything. I studied her, my heart feeling heavier than before. She was sorry. I could see it, feel it, but regret didn't undo betrayal. And I realized then I wasn't here to forgive her. I was here to move on. I pushed back my chair, standing up. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Jessica. Her breath hitched. Michael, please. I'm done. And this time I meant it. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving behind the last piece of my old life. Walking out of that cafe, I felt lighter, but not necessarily better. Cutting Jessica off, saying those final words. It should have felt like closure. It should have made me feel free. But the truth was, freedom didn't come with an instant wave of relief. It came with an overwhelming emptiness. I spent the next few days moving through life on autopilot work, sleep, eat, repeat. My hotel room became a temporary shelter, but it wasn't home. The place I once called home, where Jessica and I had built a life together, no longer existed for me. Then one evening, as I sat in my hotel room staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed. I almost didn't check it, assuming it was Jessica again. But when I glanced at the screen, I saw a different name. David, an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time. I hesitated before answering. Yeah, Michael, man. His voice was cautious, careful. I ran into Jessica earlier. She looked rough. I let out a short laugh. Yeah, well, she should. David sighed. Look, I know you don't want to hear this, but she's a mess. She told me she regrets everything. Said she didn't realize how much she was throwing away until it was too late. I clenched my jaw. She realized it the moment she got caught, maybe. Maybe David admitted, but I think she's genuinely broken over this. I closed my eyes. What do you want me to do, David? Take her back? Forget that she spent months lying to me? No, he said quickly. I'm not saying that He hesitated. I just wanted to check in on you, see how you're holding up. That caught me off guard, because the truth was, no one had really asked me that. I don't know, I admitted I feel numb. David exhaled. That's normal, but don't let this destroy you, man. You deserve better than what she did. For the first time in a while, I felt a hint of something other than anger. Gratitude, maybe. Thanks, I said. We talked for a little longer, nothing too deep, and when I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the hotel mirror. I barely recognized the man, looking back at me. I had spent so much time defining myself as Jessica's husband. Now I had no idea who I was without that title, but maybe it was time to find out. The next morning, I woke up feeling different, not better, not healed, but something inside me had shifted. For the first time in weeks, I didn't reach for my phone to check if Jessica had texted. I didn't replay our last conversation in my head. Instead, I got up, showered, and decided I needed to stop hiding in a hotel room. I spent the day walking through the city. Chicago had always been a place of movement, of stories unfolding building on every street corner, but I had never really seen it before. Not like this. I had been so consumed by my marriage, by Jessica, by the quiet loneliness of a failing relationship, that I forgot what it felt like to just exist on my own. At some point, I wandered into a bookstore I used to visit years ago, back when life felt simpler. I ran my fingers over the spines of books I never made time to read, inhaling the scent of old pages I had spent so long neglecting myself. I bought a book I had meant to read for years, but never did. It wasn't much, but it felt like a small step, like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been lost. That evening, I called David and agreed to meet for drinks. When I got to the bar, he was already waiting 2 beers in front of him. "You look better," he said as I sat down. I smirked, "Thanks." He took a sip of his drink, studying me. "You holding up?" I shrugged. "Honestly, I don't know." David leaned back in his chair. "That's better than being stuck." We talked about everything except Jessica, about work, about old memories, about how we had lost touch over the years. It was the first normal conversation I'd had in a long time. And for once, I felt like me again, not just a man drowning in heartbreak. Then as we were finishing our drinks, David set his glass down and looked at me seriously. "Listen, man," he said, "I know you don't want to hear this, but Jessica's still in love with you." I exhaled sharply. "David, no. Just hear me out," he interrupted. "I'm not saying that means you should take her back. Hell, I wouldn't if I were you, but I saw her yesterday and she's not the same woman I used to know. She's wrecked Michael." I stared at my drink. "Good." David sighed. "I get it. You're angry, you should be, but I don't want you to carry this bitterness forever. You gotta let it go at some point. For you, not for her." I didn't respond right away, because as much as I wanted to hold on to the anger, I knew he was right. Hating Jessica wouldn't heal me. I had to find a way to move on. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. I wasn't there yet. But maybe I was getting closer. The next few days passed in a haze of quiet reflection. I kept thinking back to David's words. You gotta let it go at some point. The anger I'd been holding on to felt heavier now, like a weight I couldn't ignore. I realized that my whole life had revolved around Jessica, around the mess we'd created, and I'd forgotten what it felt like to be just me. I wasn't sure how to start, but I knew I had to. Every step felt like I was walking through thick fog, unsure of what was ahead, but pushing forward anyway. I spent more time outside, breathing in the city air, letting myself just exist in the present moment. It wasn't easy, but I started feeling the sharp edges of my grief dull just a little bit. Every book I read, every conversation I had, every small moment of peace, each one chipped away at the fortress I'd built around my heart. One evening, I decided to take a walk down to the pier. It was quiet, the water reflecting the fading light of the sun. I stood there for a while, watching the boats drift by, listening to the sounds of the city in the distance. It wasn't until I felt the cold of the evening air creeping in that I realized I had been holding my breath, holding on to something I didn't need anymore. I wasn't sure where the future would take me or if I'd ever feel truly whole again. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. I didn't need to fix everything at once. I didn't need to have all the answers. But maybe I was starting to figure out how to move forward one small step at a time. And maybe, just maybe that was enough, the end, or maybe the beginning. I spent the next few weeks trying to piece myself together. There were moments when the silence felt unbearable, when the absence of Jessica in my life weighed me down like a 1,000-pound anchor. But I kept pushing through it. It wasn't about forgetting her, it was about learning to live with the person I had become without her. I kept up my walks around the city, exploring parts of Chicago I'd never seen before. The routine felt grounding, like I was slowly reintroducing myself to the world. At times, I ran into old friends, some who had no idea what had happened, and others who, like David, had heard bits and pieces of the story. They didn't ask too many questions, and I was grateful for that. But every now and then, when I was alone in the quiet of my apartment, the thoughts would creep back in. What now? What happens next? I found myself back at the bookstore more than once, picking up books I'd meant to read but never did. There was something comforting about the smell of old paper, the promise of stories waiting to be told. Just like mine, I'd been so obsessed with the idea of fixing my past, of somehow making everything right with Jessica, that I forgot. I was still living, still breathing, still capable of writing my own story. It wasn't about finding closure anymore. It was about accepting that I wasn't the same person I had been when I walked away from her. I had changed. And maybe that was the point. Maybe I had been running from who I was becoming, because I didn't want to face the fear of being alone. But being alone wasn't the same as being broken. I started working again. At first, it was just small projects, things that didn't require too much of my focus. But soon I found myself throwing myself back into it in a way I hadn't before. It was like I was rediscovering my passion for the work, for the craft, for the reason I started it all in the first place. A couple of months went by, and one evening I found myself sitting in the same bar where David and I had met up nursing a drink. It was quieter now, and I liked it. A new playlist hummed in the background, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the ghost of my past was haunting me. Then, to my surprise, I saw her, Jessica. She was sitting at the far end of the bar, her back to me. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She looked different, thinner, but not in an unhealthy way. Her hair was shorter, styled differently, but her presence, it was the same. That unmistakable feeling of her, like a warmth that could either comfort you or burn you. I felt a knot form in my chest. I didn't know if I was ready to see her again, but I couldn't turn away. She turned, then her eyes catching mine across the room. The moment felt like a pause in time. Neither of us moved, neither of us spoke. It was like the universe was holding its breath. Then slowly, Jessica stood and walked toward me, her eyes not leaving mine, and as she got closer, I felt 1,000 emotions crash into me all at once. Anger, sadness, longing, relief, all of it. But when she sat down across from me, the first thing she said wasn't an apology or an explanation. She just looked at me and said, "I'm sorry." Sorry, it was simple, but I felt it. Every part of me did. And in that moment, I realized that maybe the hardest part of moving on wasn't about finding closure with her. It was about finding peace with myself.